This is the Kaltz Excavating Company Incorporated, MUE Incorporated, Employee Safety Orientation. At Kaltz MUE, we dig safety. This would be a great opportunity to grab a piece of paper and a pen to write down any notes you may have to be answered, concluding this orientation. At Kaltz MUE, we have 3 safety professionals on staff. Our safety director is Doug Maciejewski, our safety specialist is Kevin Hausner, and our site safety specialist is Ken Spahalski. We ask that any and all employees contact us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to report any injuries, damages, incidents, unsafe acts, unsafe behaviors, or any other safety related issues that you may have. Also, any questions that you have concluding this safety orientation, we'd be happy to address them with you. The safety orientation will give you a basic understanding of the following subjects and the policies and procedures relating to them. Throughout your time at Kaltz Excavating, you will learn more about these along with your role and responsibilities. At Kaltz MUE, it is our policy to provide you a clean, safe work environment free of all recognized hazards. Any hazards that we have recognized, we have policies, procedures, and equipment in place to prevent those hazards from becoming an event. We are regulated by Michigan OSHA and federal OSHA in accordance with the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Act. We rely strongly on our employees to report any hazards that have not been previously identified so we can maintain a safe work environment for all of our employees. My OSHA breaks down the job site into 2 different kinds of persons. The first is the qualified person. The qualified person has the recognized degree and professional standing within the company to oversee the entire project. The qualified person does not have to be on the job site at all times, but is notated as the problem solver for any problems that may arise. The competent person, on the other hand, is required to be on the job site at all times. The competent person will also have the basic understanding and possess basic knowledge to carry out the responsibilities of the qualified person while ultimately being able to call for an evacuation when a significant hazard is present. An example of this is that if the conditions change in any trench or excavation, the competent person will be able to determine if the trench or excavation is safe to enter. Stop work authority is one of the most important things that you will learn in the safety orientation. It is important that every employee understand their ability to stop work anytime a dangerous situation exists, something doesn't look or feel right, the wrong tool for the job, or the required materials are not present. Having the wrong tool for the job or not having the right materials to perform the work is very probable due to the fact that we work remotely on a regular basis. If the wrong tool for the job is present or we do not have the required materials present, it is important that all work is stopped until the right tool and the required materials are present. Every employee at Kaltz MUE has the ability to stop work, no matter if it's their first day on the job site or they are the president of the company. It is also important to note that the newest eyes on the job site are some of the best at identifying a dangerous situation. This is because they have not been exposed on a regular basis to the hazards that are present and did not build complacency during that time. It is important that all new employees speak up when they see anything that could harm themselves or any other employee. Kaltz MUE is regulated by the Department of Transportation, DOT. We are required to do pre-employment drug screening along with quarterly random drug screening. We use our third-party drug screening company, Pipeline Testing Consortium, to provide us names of the employees that will need to be screened in a given quarter. We also do post-accident and injury drug screening depending on severity and customer's request. We also reserve the right to do probable cause drug screening in the event we feel you are under the influence of any type of drug. Our alcohol policy is simple. There's no drinking on the job. There's also not tying one on the night before and coming into work drunk. Anything above a 0.02 will bring you some sort of repercussion if you do show up to work. If you have a problem with alcohol, we do have a self-referring alcohol problem, and the safety department can get you the help that you need. It is important that you always ask. We have a strict firearm policy that is regulated by the MPSC or the Michigan Public Service Commission. No firearms or weapons of any kind are to be permitted on the job site. No firearms are also not permitted in any company vehicles. If you choose to drive your vehicle to work every day, you will not be permitted to carry a firearm in your vehicle. A concealed weapons permit does not exclude you from this policy. If you drive a Kaltz MUE vehicle, you will be required to adhere to our fleet safety policy. Our fleet safety policy will be provided to you. A pre-trip checklist must be performed and documented each day on a pre-trip checklist pad that will be provided. Employees are responsible for all traffic offenses that are not relating to the vehicles, such as seatbelt violations or speeding violations. Any traffic offense that is relating to the vehicle, such as a taillight out, the company will be responsible for. However, we are hoping these issues will be addressed during the pre-trip inspection. You have to be properly licensed to operate our vehicles. The chauffeur's license is a condition of employment. It is a 20-question test taken at the Secretary of State. The company will not reimburse for this test. We will, however, provide you authorization to get a DOT physical in which you will obtain a medical card. This medical card is typically good for 2 years, but may be reduced dependent on any pre-existing conditions that you may have. If you operate a vehicle over 26,000 pounds or above 10,000 pounds in tandem, meaning trailer, you will be required to obtain a CDL before operating any of these vehicles. Seatbelts are required by law and must be worn at all times. If personal vehicles are used during the workday, an insurance certificate must be provided showing required minimum coverage. If you are simply driving to the job site in the morning and leaving at the end of the day, you are not required to provide this insurance certificate. If you drive any of our vehicles home, you are not permitted to allow any family members or any non-employees to ride in our company vehicles. In the event you are involved in an accident, it is always first important to pull off to a safe area for public safety and your own. If serious injuries are present following the accident, it is important that you call 911. If serious injuries are not present, simply contact the local police department to file a police report. It is also important to contact your supervisor and the safety department to report the accident and determine next steps. Our insurance company, AmeriSure, has provided an accident packet to help document all the required information you will need to obtain before you leave the scene. It is also important that you use hazard lights and hazard triangles to inform other motorists of your situation. The hazard lights and hazard triangles are located inside the vehicle. It is also important that you gather as much information as possible, even if it's not listed on the AmeriSure packet. It is also important that you never leave the scene of an accident until you're cleared to do so. Typically, this is from a law enforcement professional. In your application packet, you will have to give us authorization to obtain your driving record from the Secretary of State. This is required for any employees that will be operating our vehicles. Any traffic accidents or tickets received while operating company vehicles must be reported to Kaltz MUE Safety Department immediately. Any and all arrests that occur after the initial pre-employment background check is performed must be reported immediately. If the status of your driver's license changes for any reason, you are not permitted to drive a company vehicle, and it must be also reported immediately. It is always important to report anything that might be produced on your driving record. Any issues on your driving record will be addressed by the safety department and Kaltz MUE management. To adhere to our cell phone policy, no cell phone communication is permitted while the vehicle is in motion, regardless of hands-free use. It is important that you do not take any calls while driving, you do not text while operating a vehicle, and if you happen to receive a phone call while you are driving, it is important that you ignore it and pull over before making the phone call. Crash test studies have identified the focus of the mind while using the cell phone is directly related to accidents and not simply by holding it to your ear. The greatest hazard in modern construction is the use of electronic devices on the job site. That is why it is the policy of Kaltz MUE that only foremen, supervisors, and qualified persons are permitted to use electronic devices while work is being conducted. If for any reason any other crew member requires the use of an electronic device, they must first get permission from their foreman or other recognized authority and either getting to the cab of a truck or completely leave the job site to make the call. This is because the phone conversation is a distraction, and with moving equipment moving on the job site, it is a significant hazard. There is also no filming, photography, or any use of social media on the job site. The job site is owned by our customers, and therefore there is no filming or photography allowed. Also, there is no use of iPods, MP3 players, headphones, earbuds, or any other type of music while on a job site. All employees need to be able to actively communicate and be aware of their surroundings. Hazard communication is a requirement focused on communicating the hazards of different substances and chemicals. We are by far not a chemical company whatsoever, but we do have chemicals that have a requirement to be labeled because at the end of the day, it's your right to know what you're working with. The Right to Know station is located in the safety office and contains multiple safety data sheets for all our chemicals that we have in supply to not only explain what the chemical is, but how it will react and what to do if you are faced with ingestion or any type of absorption into your body. It is imperative that all chemicals are properly labeled, and it is everyone's responsibility to ensure this. If a chemical is ever observed in a container without a label, it has to be disposed of properly. Training will be conducted to ensure understanding of this, but again, it is everyone's responsibility that if they ever have anything, any chemical or substance in a container, that it has a proper label and is properly understood. The MISDIG law, also known as Public Act 174, requires all excavators or anyone putting any form of depression into the ground to contact 811 3 days prior to any excavation. This is to ensure that all facilities are marked by the facility owners, who may also hire a facility marking company such as URG and USIC. All job sites requiring excavation have to acquire a MISDIG ticket, and thus will also acquire a MISDIG ticket number. With this MISDIG ticket number, the foreman or any other competent person must verify whether or not the ticket is valid by checking positive response either through the telephone or online at misdig.org. And this is to show that all facilities have responded and show that they are marked and you have the clear go ahead to dig. If any utilities are hit, there will be a requirement to complete a damage report to document the damage and also aid in any type of damage collection that may occur further down the road. When we're looking at any type of misdig staking, looking at the actual facility that's marked, 4 foot on each side of that marking is what's considered the caution zone. And within that caution zone, you cannot excavate with any power equipment, i.e. a excavator, a backhoe, or any other power equipment that can excavate within that area without first exposing that facility using hand excavation methods such as a shovel or a spade to identify the facility and understand the location in which it is going. Once the utility is exposed and spotted, you will be able to use power equipment. This facility marking is notated as a duct run. And in this duct run, you will usually see 2 lines that can be spread no greater than 3 feet apart, and then 4 foot on each side of those markings for an 11-foot total distance where all facilities within that duct run need to be identified and understood the direction in which they're traveling before any power equipment can come in. Unfortunately, these duct run markings vary with the different facility owners and the marking companies, but it is important that you understand what this looks like and how many facilities that you may have to expose before entering with power equipment. If a marked facility is contacted within the caution zone with power equipment, there is a high probability that we will be responsible for that damage. In this event, it is imperative that we contact the facility owner to let them know about the damage and also fill out a damage report so that an investigation can be undertaken. We also need to have pictures and document using a hit kit, which is an oversized ruler and marking flags to actually show how far the markings were from the actual damage. In these situations, contacting the safety department is the best thing, and dependent on our schedules, we will attempt to go out and view and investigate the damage. If a facility is damaged outside of the marked caution zone, there is a high probability that we will not be responsible. And it is very important that we not only complete a damage report, that we also report the damage to the facility owner, report the damage to the safety department, so that we will be able to do a full investigation of what actually happened and what was damaged. Pictures are imperative to prove that we are not liable for any of these actions. It is possible to damage a facility using hand excavation methods. Just using a shovel or any other hand excavation methods does not prevent you from damaging a facility. If a utility is struck and damaged, it is important not to ever cover it up. That would go against and be illegal in accordance with Public Act 174. If a facility is damaged using hand excavation methods, a damage report will need to be filled out. You still need to complete all your proper reporting, and it is important that we also do not complete our own repairs. We want to leave the excavation open so that the facility owner can come later and make the repairs that are necessary. When working on electrical or gas distribution, it is required by law that a pre-job brief is conducted and documented with the crew before any type of work is conducted. The pre-job brief is beneficial and helps provide descriptive information about the job and prompts the crew to actually have a discussion to identify any hazards that are present, but also to ensure that the crew has proper PPE, to ensure that traffic control was set up properly, to see if the gas monitor that will be used on the job has been properly bump tested and it has a up-to-date calibration, and that the scope of work, which is basically what is going to be going on that day, is communicated to the entire crew, because there's nothing more dangerous than a crew member not knowing what is going on or what they're supposed to be doing. Also, we like to emphasize on the pre-job brief and remind everyone of their authority to stop the job. So it is important that this is discussed every morning so that all crew members feel comfortable with stopping the job. The pre-job brief also includes the crew lead, so whoever the competent person is on the job site, the location, what the work is being performed, the date in which it's being performed, the job task, so actually what is being done. So an example of this would be a secondary service installation. And then also a medical facility. In the event that one of our crew members or anyone from the public is injured, we want to ensure that the medical facility address is listed there so we can inform 911 or we can inform anyone that might be transporting them there. There are 3 spaces for hazards to be listed, also the controls that will be implemented. A hazard can be anything like a piece of rebar sticking out of the ground. So a control method for this would be to actually communicate it to the rest of the crew, maybe mark it, barricade it, just prevent that hazard from becoming an event, like someone, falling on it and impaling themselves. The crew members will also be required to place their name on the pre-job brief, mark whether they are an employee or a visitor. Again, safety has no stripes, so there is no ranking or any type of position other than, are you an employee of Kaltz MUE or are you not? The time in which you're signing on to the pre-job brief, so the time that you were present for the discussion. And then also there's a little checkbox there to ensure that the employee understands that they have all the PPE on and that is required to perform the task. Down in the additional notes, you'll see that there's job scope change, restricted areas, AOCs, and the consumer's GOM or their maintenance manual. Job scope change, if you go to a job believing that the job is going to be done one way and you encounter something that changes the direction in which the job is going, that would be some pertinent information to put down on the pre-job brief. Restricted areas could be something where a meter is being installed or a secondary service is being installed on a new build construction, and there are roofers present that are throwing materials down off the roof that they do not need and could possibly hit one of our workers. So that would be important to restrict that area to any employees or visitors that would come on the job site to see us. AOC, also known as an abnormal operating condition, is where you encounter something that is either incorrect or something that is going to prevent the job from continuing. So such as you see a dent in the sidewall of a transformer, or you see excessive melting on a plastic main, or the equipment is not working properly. That would be an abnormal operating condition. It would be a reason to stop the job, and it would be a reason for the entire crew to convene to talk about the next steps. Also, if you are working on the gas side, you will be required to review a chapter of the consumer's GOM every day before work is started. So the chapter that is chosen and discussed needs to relate to the work that is actually being conducted that day. And then finally, the signature line, just like any legal document, it will need to be signed by the person that is filling it out. It doesn't necessarily have to be the crew lead, and then it also needs to be dated. Excavations and trenching. So when looking at the rules and regulations with excavations and trenching, it's easy to remember the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rule, also known as trenching by the numbers. 1 is the requirement for one competent person to be present on the job site when any trench or excavation is present. 2 is the distance that a spoil pile, which is the excavated dirt, has to remain outside of an excavation. This same requirement applies to any materials or equipment that are present, and they must remain minimum 2 feet away from the edge of the excavation so none of them fall back in. 3 feet is how far a ladder has to extend outside of an excavation. It is visually easy to see the length of the ladder sticking out because each rung or the step is exactly 12 inches or 1 foot. So if you know you have the correct distance when you have 3 rungs outside of the excavation. 4 feet is what the requirement is for a ladder to be present in an excavation. That doesn't mean in a 3-foot excavation that, if you want a ladder, you don't put one in there. Actually, having a ladder aids in not, adding excess damage to your body by jumping in and out and putting added stress. But the requirement is 4 feet. That is, any part of the excavation is 4 feet. A ladder must be in the hole for evacuation purposes. The 5 is for 5-foot excavations, in which we need to have a little extra protection. The first that I will discuss is a trench box, also known as the shoring box. It is a box that is engineered and can be placed within the excavation to prevent any collapse. The important things to know about having a trench box or a shoring box inside an excavation is that we work for a utility company, so the chances of there being a facility at the base of the excavation where work is actually being done is highly probable, which means that there might be parts of the box that doesn't enclose or prevent any dirt from coming in, and that is why we have a 2-foot rule that the trench box can be no greater than 2 feet from the very base of the excavation, because you still have to have the protection from the soil coming in from the bottom. If it exceeds 2 feet for any reason, we will have to put sheet piling in between the facility to ensure that no excess dirt comes inside the excavation. 18 inches is how far a trench box or shoring box has to protrude outside of the excavation. This is to identify that there is an excavation present, but also to ensure that no materials, equipment, or excess spoil can fall back in the excavation. Again, since it's greater than 4 feet, a ladder will be required to be placed in the excavation. It is important that you have the right length of ladder present on the job site for the excavation depth present. The next protective device that I'll talk about is shoring. It involves shoring rods and shoring plates. Shoring rods can be anything from hydraulic, mechanical, pneumatic, and shoring plates could be wood, steel, aluminum, anything for the rod to push against to prevent any type of trench collapse. This is still an excavation that is greater than 4 feet, so it will require a ladder in the hole that will be required to extend at least 3 feet outside of the excavation. The 2-foot distance and requirement for spoil piles and materials and equipment still stands. The next protective method that I'll discuss for excavations greater than 5 feet is what is called benching or shelving. This is something that acts off of angle of repose to determine the actual bench or shelf height and width. Benching and shelving is not necessarily something that is going to be used that often, given in the state of Michigan, Class C or Type C soil is mostly common. If you have Type C soil anywhere inside the excavation or any part of the excavation, you will not be able to do any form of benching or shelving. You will need to just simply place a box in the hole, or you will have to shore it up. The final protective method that I will discuss is angle of repose. With angle of repose, the whole point is to ensure that the correct angle is present given the soil classification so that no dirt falls back in the excavation on any potential worker that may be working inside of it. Angle of repose is, again, not very common in our type of work, but can be used. We ask that with both shelving and benching and angle of repose that you consult the safety department or your immediate supervisor before continuing and making entry in any excavation using these 2 methods. A very common, significant hazard present on the majority of our job sites is overhead electrical wires, which if you have a machine that can extend the distance of the electrical exposed wires can come in contact, thus resulting in electrocution or electrical shock. It is important that all equipment present on the job site that has the ability to extend within reach of the electrical wiring maintains a 10-foot distance at all times. The 10-foot barrier must not be broken at any time, and if it has to be broken at any time, we have to contact the facility owner to see if it can be de-energized, isolated, or insulated, or completely removed or eliminated. To effectively ensure that the 10-foot barrier is not broken by any machine present on the job site, you must have a spotter present to inform the operator if he is starting to break the 10-foot barrier. It is important not to store any materials or equipment underneath power lines due to the fact that the person that dropped off the materials and equipment may have understood that they were beneath power lines and ensured they kept a safe distance, but the person that will come to recover those items later on may not know they are beneath and in close proximity to the overhead electrical wires. Situational awareness when working around any type of heavy equipment is imperative to preventing any type of injury or incident on a job site. This is why it is important to never walk, stand, or work under the bucket or boom of a backhoe or excavator. It is also important not to enter an excavation with the same overhead hazard. Also, when working around an excavator, it's important to understand the swing radius and understand that the operator has reduced visibility when operating the machinery. It is your responsibility to maintain a safe distance around all of this equipment. All of our heavy equipment, including excavators and backhoes, along with all of our vehicles, are equipped with backup alarms. These are required by law and must remain operational when the equipment is in operation. The backup alarm is meant to be annoying to get the attention of any persons that may be in the surrounding area to inform them that the machinery is in motion. If there is no audible backup alarm or it has been damaged in any way, a spotter must be utilized when the excavator is moving or any vehicle or backhoe is backing up. Some of our machinery or heavy equipment have enclosed cabs, which means they have the steel protective barrier and glass surrounding the operator. In these enclosed cabs, they are all required to have 2.5 pound minimum fire extinguishers present. Our 2.5 pound fire extinguishers are disposable and good for 12 years. Just like any fire extinguisher, they are required to be inspected and maintained on a monthly basis. The disposable fire extinguisher is very low on maintenance, but still has to be inspected. When you are completing your inspection, it is important to take the fire extinguisher out of its holder, tip it upside down, and then tip it back over to ensure that the agent is being moved around and is not caking at the bottom. It is also important to look at the valve and also the gauge to ensure that it is remain pressurized. You can determine the date of manufacture of the fire extinguisher to see if it is still compliant and is still able to be used by looking at the stamp date of manufacture at the base of the cylinder. It'll simply have two digits stating the year that it was produced. As long as it is within the 12 years, the fire extinguisher can be placed back on the mount and the inspection will be complete. Another piece of equipment that we will discuss is called a bore machine. Bore machines are horizontal directional drills have revolutionized the construction and excavating industry by being able to place facilities underground without having to open cut or dig. This is beneficial when crossing any roadways or waterways. It is important to note that a qualified bore operator must inspect the site and the bore path prior to drilling, and the bore plan must be communicated to all crew members. Horizontal drills must have a 6-foot zoned off barrier with grabber cones and caution tape to ensure no persons come in contact with the operating bore machine as it is drilling. Any facilities crossed with the bore machine have to be exposed. If the operator were to continue to drill past the marked facilities without first exposing them, that would be called blind boring and is strictly prohibited at our company. In the event the bore rods become jammed or unable to pull back, they may have to be exposed to break free. Under no circumstances can a pipe wrench be used to do this. If, for any reason, there was a release of hazardous energy and the pipe was to turn, the pipe wrench would remain on the pipe and could possibly hit the worker that is in the excavation with the rods. Whenever a worker is inside of an excavation, to disconnect or reconnect the bore head or any reamer, which is used to make the bore hole larger, the machine must be turned off and the key removed. This is all a part of lockout tagout, which we will talk about in a little bit. The single greatest hazard when operating a bore machine is the potential for the bore rod to make contact with an energized electrical cable beneath the ground. If the bore rod makes contact with the energized electrical cable, and being that the bore machine and bore rod are a great conductor of electricity, the electric will travel throughout the entire bore machine. It does not kill the operator because the operator is seated above and not touching the ground. Once the operator places a foot on the ground, he would complete the circuit and thus be electrocuted or receive an electrical shock. This is why the bore machines are all equipped with what's called a strike alert system to alert the bore operator if an energized cable has been contacted and to let them know to remain on the machine and follow their procedures for exiting the machine and de-energizing or pulling the bore machine away. Traffic control is very important when working alongside or close to the road right away. Sign signals and barricades ensure the protection of our employees along with the surrounding public. All traffic control devices must be placed and set in accordance with the MUE, which is the Uniform Traffic Control Manual for the state of Michigan. Traffic control devices can be placed in many different ways dependent on the job site size, the work that's being performed, and the area and where the work is being performed. It is always important to reference the MUE when setting up traffic control or verifying that if the traffic control is correct. We hope that our employees will contact the safety department anytime there is any question if the traffic control is set up correctly. Electric safety, or electricity on the job site, is one of the most cited citations given by MIOSHA each year to companies. It also poses a significant hazard to all employees present. This is why all extension cords on the job site must be inspected before and after each use to ensure their integrity. Now we're going to go over some defects that may be seen on extension cords to be able to recognize when an extension cord needs to be replaced. In this situation, the cord has pulled away from the plug, at least the outer sheathing, exposing the wires underneath. If this situation presents itself, the extension cord must be replaced. In the first extension cord, it shows the sheathing that has been removed or pulled off, exposing the wires underneath. In this situation, the extension cord will need to be replaced. The second picture shows an extension cord that was pinched or flattened, maybe crushed, in between a door jamb or a machine or any other piece of equipment. In this situation, you cannot ensure the integrity of the wires underneath, therefore it will have to be replaced. Finally, ground prongs serve a great purpose by grounding out all tools to prevent for electric shock. If the ground prong is missing or damaged, the entire extension cord must be replaced. Extension cords must never be spliced together. Extension cords spliced together can pose a significant hazard, such as the picture seen. If you look on the left-hand side, the typical color for 20 amps is yellow. And on the right side, the typical amperage is 30 amps. If you were to splice these two extension cords together, you could start a fire or even worse. It is important that absolutely no splicing takes place. Ground fault circuit interrupters, also known as GFCIs, are safety devices that are placed between the extension cord and the power source to shut off the flow of electricity in the event there is a fault, such as an employee coming in contact with exposed wires. All electrical sources must be GFCI protected. All of our generators, which give us electricity on the job site, already have GFCIs built in. As long as they are functioning and operational, that will work. If you are ever using a power source that is not from a generator, you must ensure that it has a GFCI and that you test before you use it. If the GFCI is not operational or the source does not have a GFCI, you must use a pigtail shown in the picture to place between the extension cord and the power source. Lockout tagout, also known as hazardous energy control, is a required program for all companies to have in place. This prevents the release of hazardous energy on any employees, possibly resulting in serious injury or death. Lockout tagout programs can be very extensive. However, in the construction industry, they can also be very simplistic. In a situation where a mechanic is working on a piece of equipment, such as a backhoe, a simple, easy way to prevent the release of hazardous energy on that mechanic would be to simply pull out the key and hold it in a place until his work is concluded and the backhoe becomes operational. It is also important to put tags on pieces of equipment that are defective or should not be run. An example of this is if you had a sawzall and as you were using the sawzall, it started to smoke or spark. You would want to take that sawzall out of service, but you would also want to place a tag on the sawzall so that no one would use that sawzall again and that it also could be repaired. It is important to always notate the person who is placing the tag and the reason and the date when the tag was placed. Fire extinguishers are required in all the cabs of our vehicles and also all of our enclosed cab equipment as stated before. Fire extinguishers can help extinguish a fire and prevent a fire from getting out of control. Fire extinguishers must be inspected on a monthly basis and documented accordingly with the initials and the date of inspection. It is important to inspect the cylinder to make sure there's not any creases, dents, or anything significant that could release the 200 psi pressure of nitrogen inside. Also, you'll want to check the hose to ensure the rubber hose has good integrity and will allow the agent to flow all the way through it without any obstructions. It is also important to look at the gauge to ensure that the fire extinguisher is charged with nitrogen to the appropriate level for the size fire extinguisher. If the fire extinguisher gauge is in the green, you know you are all set. If it is past the green or before the green, it will need to be serviced. Fire extinguishers are serviced on an annual basis. if you look at the side tag and saw that the fire extinguisher was serviced greater than a year ago, it will need to be serviced. Finally, at the end of the hose, there is a nozzle to focus and spread the fire extinguishing agent on the fire. If this nozzle is broken, cracked, or a piece of it is missing, it will not allow the agent to be placed where you would like it to. When you are fighting a fire, no matter in the incipient stage or a full-fledged fire, you always want to remember the acronym PASS for fighting the fire with a fire extinguisher. The first, P, is pull. This is where you will pull the pin, which will allow you to depress the handle. Then you want to aim the fire extinguisher nozzle. You want to aim at the base of the fire because that is where the fuel source is. The agent is meant to suppress the fire, thus you want to aim at the bottom. Then you want to squeeze the handle, and that will depress the valve and allow the pressurized agent to evacuate and leave the hose and nozzle towards the fire. You want to always use a sweeping motion on the fire so that you don't focus in one general area and spread the fire further. You want to sweep side to side to cover whatever size fire that you encounter.
Chances are you will go through your entire working career and never have to use a fire extinguisher. Chances are you will never have to use one while on the road, but there should be one in your vehicle. Have you inspected it lately? Close your eyes for a second. Can you point to the nearest fire extinguisher? Where is the second nearest one? No matter where you happen to be, you should always know the location of the nearest extinguisher. Go take a look at it. Has it been inspected? Fire extinguishers should be inspected regularly and at least once a month. Even if your company inspects them, you should look them over to make sure they meet 3 requirements. 1. Is the extinguisher charged? The pressure should always be at the recommended level. On extinguishers equipped with a gauge, the needle should be in the green zone, not too high and not too low. 2. Are all extinguishers mounted correctly? The top of an extinguisher should never be mounted higher than 60 inches above the floor surface, and the bottom of an extinguisher should never be closer than 4 inches above the floor. They should never be used as door props or paperweights. They are not coat hangers or tool hooks. 3. Are they unobstructed and easily accessed? Never place anything in front of a fire extinguisher. In the event of an emergency, we can't waste time trying to find the extinguisher that's hidden by a box or impossible to reach because it's behind a piece of equipment. Most fire standards recommend that a clear and unobstructed path to the extinguisher be maintained at all times, with the access being at least 2 to 3 feet wide. They cannot be hidden behind doors, cabinets, or anything else. There are 2 important things to remember if you ever need to use an extinguisher. First, make sure that you never place yourself in a position where the fire is between you and a safe exit. Keep the fire in front of you and the safe exit at your back. And second, remember the PASS system. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. When you need to use the extinguisher, first pull the safety pin from the handle. Then, aim the extinguisher nozzle at the base of the fire. This is the spot where the flames are touching the fuel source. Next, squeeze the handle to activate the extinguisher. And finally, sweep the spray back and forth across the target. Continue until the fire is out. If you are unsure that you can put the fire out, evacuate the area. Thanks for watching and have a safe day.
Ladders are an essential piece of equipment used on our job sites every day and are an essential part of our operations. We use type 1A non-conductive ladders due to the fact that a ladder may be placed on an exposed electrical wire in the ground. The ladders are non-conductive because they have a fiberglass composite side rail that prevents the flow of electricity. The rungs, which you step on, are made of aluminum and conduct electricity. However, the electricity cannot pass through the entire ladder as they are separated by the fiberglass composite. It is always important to inspect a ladder before every use to ensure its integrity before you use it. First, you want to inspect the rungs or the steps that are made of aluminum. If the aluminum is scratched, dented, or beyond repair, the ladder will need to be replaced. Looking at the fiberglass composite side rails, if you see any cracks, tearing, stripping, the ladder will need to be replaced. It is important for ladders to be used for their intended purpose, which is to climb up and down. Do not ever use a ladder to cross over a trench or an excavation as a scaffold. Housekeeping is very important to reduce the probability of an injury occurring. It's always important to keep the job site clean and picked up to prevent slips, trips, and falls, which is the leading cause of job site accident incident. Simply placing a cone on a piece of equipment or material that is on the ground can prevent a slip, trip, or fall. It is also important never to run on a job site. You don't want to be in a rush to a bad outcome. Causing an incident or injury on the job site will cause the job to prolong further than if you had just walked. Personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, is the last line of defense in preventing injury. It must be worn on the job site at all times, and at a minimum, every employee must wear a hard hat, safety glasses, a vest, and leather work boots. They do not have to be steel toe or safety toe, however, that is highly recommended. We provide the hard hat, the safety glasses, and the vest. You will need to provide the boots. Safety glasses are provided, but you are able to use sunglasses or any form of prescription eyewear. You just have to ensure that the frames and the lenses are ANSI Z87.1 plus approved. If you have any question whether your eyewear is approved, feel free to contact the safety department. The vest is a class 2 safety vest, which means it has a reflective stripe. If you choose to wear a safety shirt, that is acceptable as long as it is class 2, which means it has the reflective stripe. You are able to wear your hard hat if you have your personal one. You just have to ensure that it is inspected and that the harness inside and the overall integrity of the hard hat is intact. As stated before, any questions that you have with this orientation or our safety program at Kaltz MUE, feel free to contact the safety department using the contacts previously given. We want to ensure your safety and we are here for you. Welcome to the Kaltz MUE family.